The great thing about being the last speaker is now I have to live up to what my previous colleagues have done and the great conversations they've had with you all, and compare myself to that. And I'm also between you guys and getting out of here. So I'll start to, at some point, see you starting to get a bit fidgety. And at that point, I'll know to cut things through. The other thing, of course, is I've very rarely write a lot of notes, although I've had to change some because of some of the things that were said, or my thunders were already stolen earlier on. So I've had to change a few things, but it means I can speed it up, hopefully, for you guys and get you out of here at a reasonable time. Yes, I have recently helped support the ongoing implementation of Oleeo at Imperial. I went in there as a lead and change person to get them to a certain point. I have now left. I'm actually at Rolls-Royce at the moment doing something with IR35, so something totally different. But I kind of got this opportunity whilst I was at Imperial, which is why all the branding's on there. But I think what I wanted to do was actually take the piece of work that was done and talk around the importance of employer branding and the candidate experience, and we'll tie that into a little bit of how the system can work and some more of the practical steps as to, wow, this is a challenge, how can we deal with it? So I guess why me? Why am I up here? Doing that. Well, I come from a varied background. I actually started off in agency recruitment, and I can say that because I've got an ex-colleague sitting at the back there who I haven't seen since I was in agency, back in the day doing IT contract stuff. And then I went in-house, and I worked my way up, and I've worked in private, public, banking, engineering, a lot of the stuff here in the public sector or public sector areas. Royal Mail was interesting because it was public sector when I joined, private sector when I left. That was an interesting one. And obviously in the NHS. I know there's a few people here in the NHS as well, so hopefully I'll be able to draw some stuff out, and that's obviously where we're putting it in there. So hopefully I can bring private public sector experience to this, and we can go through it. So, talent scarcity. I tend to look at this slightly different to others, and I'm kind of thinking, is there a scarcity of talent, or can we just not find it? Or more importantly, can they not find us? Now, one of the stats that have been around ever since I've been here is 85% of people are open to a job opportunity, yet only 25% are actively looking. Okay, so you've got your active job seekers and your passive job seekers. And this is important for me because when you're saying we're scarce of talent, is it just because you can't find it? So you've got to look at, well, how am I trying to find it? What's my channels to market? What's my activity to market? And what's my message to market? Okay, and for me, the first thing you do is 90% of our effort tends to be putting job adverts out there, which is really only going towards the active job seekers. Okay, so if you're only going towards and you're using 90% of it, there's another 60% who would be open, but you're not putting any effort into that. Okay, so if we are just advertising our jobs, it doesn't matter how great they are, how well written they are, how exciting the adverts are, you're only hitting 25% of the market of people who will look at it. Okay? The other ones, you need to look at the channels to market that you're actually going to go on there. I'm just going to make sure, there we go. So then you go, well, the channels then. How am I going to, kind of change my channels? There's your job boards, and that's what we all do. But there was what came up here around LinkedIn. And this is the activity. The advertising is the first one. The activity is your engagement with the market. Are you actually engaging with the market? A job advert's not an engagement. An engagement is when somebody in your company puts on their profile on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, had a great day today. Just done this piece of work. We've just invented a new way of, I don't know, taking cataracts out of people's eyes. Aren't we proud of this? That kind of stuff is engaging with the market. It's not saying I have a job, come and work for us. It's promoting what it's like to work there. And that can be done centrally, and quite often companies will have to give people license to be able to do that. So it'll generally come from the recruitment team or the comms team, and people will start to say, yes, you can talk about working here, you can talk about these things, and feed them with some commentary to begin with. but then it should take a life of its own if you open it up and you allow employees to do that. And this really is just about, it's Bob's birthday. You know, this is great. We've celebrated this. We've celebrated success. And actually just making it okay for people to do it and giving them the security that, of course, if you're going to advertise, you're going to do a post about the party in the office, make sure somebody's screen isn't on with all that private information. Just be sensible and just give them some direction, but allow it and allow people to do it. LinkedIn did something recently and they said people are 10 times more likely to read a bit of, or an event or a posting on Twitter or Facebook or even LinkedIn if it comes from the individual. If it comes from the corporate account, they're less likely because they see it. So you've got your channels, you've got your branding, you can now go out to your Twitters and you can use all of that. The activity is just the advertising, and then it is the engagement. Then the next bit is the message, and this is where you get into employer brand. What is your message that's there? Now we talk a lot about celebrating and putting out all the positives out there. If somebody comes in and works for you and it's not how you described it, they will leave. And then that's a waste for everybody. So when you are looking at the tone of voice in your messaging and what you put out there, be honest. So I was at London North West Healthcare prior to this as Deputy HR Director there and brought in an employer brand. Everybody knows the NHS, but nobody knows London North West Healthcare. Why is it different to Imperial? Why is it different to all the other healthcare trusts just around us? And we dug down and we did our employer brand properly and we looked at it, what's it really like to work here? And the thing we found was, it's tough, we're big, we can't give you everything, but because we're big, there's loads of opportunity. And of course, like everybody else in the NHS, we care. So our strapline was wholehearted, not faint-hearted. And the most important thing was the not faint-hearted bit, because that made people realize that you had to be a certain type of person to work there. Now, there's other trusts a little bit further out of London, which aren't as big and aren't as complex, where you can have just as an important career and a fulfilling career, but in a slightly easier environment. So if you'd rather work in that area, great, go work there. If you want the challenge and the opportunity, come and work for us. And that's the important thing. Lots of people talk about, want to be the best place to work. Absolutely, but not for everybody, because not everybody wants to work in that environment. The examples of LinkedIn and how great they are, absolutely, be honest, this is what it's like to work here. Put it through the right channels so everybody can see it, okay? And then make sure that they understand it, because then they will self-choose. Yeah? You don't want people who don't want to be there, or you've missold it because you've said it's great. The great thing about LinkedIn is the beer barrel on a Friday, when the most senior person walks around with a big wheelbarrow full of beer and wine, and everybody helps themselves to it. So I know that because I've been fortunate enough there. So when we talk about scarcity, yes, there are some highly specialist roles and what have you, but have you actually trawled the market? And have you made sure that they are aware of you and what you like to work in there? Okay. Next one, private sector competition. That looks a bit strange, that, but this goes down to some people want to work in the private sector. Some people want to work in the public sector, but they don't know the benefits. I'm a car driver. I'm too scared to go on a motorbike. Yeah, I think it's dangerous. I think it's there. I think people who do that are nutters. That's my opinion of it, because that's my understanding of it. Got talking to a friend recently who's on a motorbike all the time and realized maybe it's not quite as bad and as dangerous as I thought it was. In the same way, I actually got into the public sector because I got made redundant in 2008. And I remember the agency saying, okay, where do you want to kind of work? Would you consider the public sector? And I laughed and said, no, it's boring, it's slow, it's what have you. 3 months later, I was head of resourcing at Department of Work and Pensions, trying to hire 22,000 people because of the government was petrified that the job centres would be inundated and they were just trying to flood it in with workers there. And all of a sudden, oh my God, this is so big, it's so busy, I'm learning so much that I would never have got in the private sector. And it's that kind of stuff that we didn't know. So when we talk about it, yes, there'll be car drivers and there'll be motorbike drivers, but it's our job to make sure that people understand what it is. And there's a lot of car drivers who could perhaps become a motorcyclist, and vice versa. And another example, you can be a meat eater or a vegetarian, you can play netball, you can play hockey, or that's the one I like the best, football or rugby. Now, I didn't actually choose these pictures, a good friend at Oleeo did, but seeing a South African try scorer, yes, there we go. So I think for me here, when we say we've got the competition, and it's been said already, it's not about trying to compete toe-to-toe with them, try and offer more money, try and offer those things. What's our unique selling point? Why would somebody come to London North West Healthcare Trust as opposed to Hillingdon Hospital Trust? Because we're different. Actually, we're different in the private sector here and the public sector, so let's use those differences to our advantage and get the people who want to do it that's right and make sure it's there. So you go back to scarcity, well actually now all of a sudden my market's gone from 25% because I just advertise, but of course I'm only advertising in places where public sector workers look, maybe civil service jobs for example, which we put in years ago. Now I'm also going to start to look at going through the channels where private sector people look as well. Why not? Sell your story there and your market's got bigger. So that's my take on that. Budget constraints. Now, I'm not too sure here if we're talking about budget constraints for what we can give our employees or budget constraints for spending money on how we can advertise and bring people in there. So I am going to take it as it's us recruiters. We haven't got any money to spend. Now, we've all been in this situation, and what I realized fairly earlier on is I might not have any money to spend, but there's usually several other people in the business who do have. And I tend to go with a big budget and go, I need a lot of money because we need to do the whole employer brand, or we need to implement something across everywhere. If you break it up and do things in stages, it's amazing how comms, they have a little bit of money squirreled away. The wider HR, let's not forget, if we can help recruit better, we can also help the onboarding and we can help talent and moving people internally. Maybe they've got a bit of money. So think creatively about where you're going to get this money from. Projects and business units. Again, there's always projects going on. In the NHS, the IT department at London North West got given a whole load of money just after everybody broke into our IT system and what have you. But some of that stuff, well, let's look at our IT systems and HR and make sure it's there. So keep your ear to the ground. Don't just look at your budget. Look at those areas there. And business units. We're ultimately there to deliver for the business unit. If you're going to do some of the things I've said around building a brand, you know, kind of going out to channels to market, trying things, do it in a little business unit first. Prove your point. The issue we have in the public sector is we have to just spend less and do more. In the private sector, generally they can do a return on investment easier because they're saying, if I spend this, the end outcome is we can improve, we can get more salespeople in who can sell more and the business can do better. In the public sector, we're saying we have to do it and say, well, if you give me some extra money, yes, we're spending more, but I have to prove I can save money elsewhere, whether it's using temporary resource, whether it's delays in projects, whatever it is, anything you can put a monetary value on. So you need to look at that, and it's hard to do that across a whole organization. So choose departments and start to look at those areas there and do it little piece at a time. Get your proof of concept. Business units are great for that. Let's run this campaign. Let's try this new advertising site. Let's try this. Let's just build a brand and build it. And if you're thinking wider, you build it and then you make sure it's layerable and you can keep on building it when the others hear about it. And it's amazing how quickly the business units find money. So yeah, we've got budget constraints, but think about how you can look elsewhere to do it. And of course, there's loads of free channels. And again, if I go back to what I was saying about the engagement of your workforce, your brand ambassadors, people who will go out in the market and talk on your behalf, they do it all on these free channels. Yes, they have paid for bits on there and you can improve things and what have you on there. But actually the honest bit is around how your employees are talking about you out there and getting your message out there. And that's all free. use it. Network on there, get all of that kind of stuff on there as well. And that helps. Right, how are we doing for time? Technically, we're 5 minutes over. That's ironic, isn't it? Time to hire. Why is it a problem? I don't get this. Can somebody, what's the biggest thing that slows down time to hire? Somebody give me an example of it. Candidate behavior. Because we're asking them too much to do too much, because we're asking them to fill out too many forms, because we're making them jump through hoops. Perhaps is one of the things. That's all us asking them to do that. Manager. Why is the manager? So why is it? So if the manager's late, why is it our problem? It's because we don't tell them it's late or make them aware of it. So that's the first thing. So data on here comes in. If you've got something, and Oleeo, great thing about it, I've got to give them a plug, and I also have to say David Earland's name as well. He was getting a bit upset that Ahmed was getting all of the stuff. So David Earland, I don't know why I said it, but I've just said it. There we go. But what they do is great. Is they'll be able to section off. Well, we've done our bit in time. The managers haven't, and you can drive their behaviour that way. So good data on a good system. You can highlight it when you put your board report out. Yes, it's taking 4 weeks, but 3 weeks of that was because the manager was sitting on their hands and not doing anything. And then I go, well, why are they sitting on their hands and not doing anything? Because we give them so much work to do and everything else. Can I not automate it or why am I asking them to do all this stuff up front? Have I got the process right? So part of it is their behavior and exposing it's there, but then also look at what we're actually asking people to do. And one of the things that we've done at Imperial, which is great and was touched upon here, is ask for it once. So whether it comes from the candidate or the manager, that information is then in the system. And just let it flow through. Don't ask for it again. The Oleeo system that's going into Imperial goes all the way through to day one readiness. So as soon as the person's been hired and offered, actually it then sends off all the forms to IT. And all the information that's there, because we've captured it in all the job rec and all that candidate, it's all there. The managers used to have to fill out a form for IT, fill out a form for uniform, fill out IT for a security pass, name, address, job title, all exactly the same thing, and send it to all these things. And of course, they did it the day before the candidate started. This now happens 3-4 weeks before. So again, time to hire, it's an our gift. The other thing is here is, so the root causes, is usually it's down to our, I guess, our own rules and regulations. So at London North West, we don't offer a conditional offer anymore. Well, we didn't when I was there, because we changed it when I was there. I'm assuming it's still the same. What we do is we offer a full offer. But in there, we say, if your checks come back, we will dismiss you. So if you've lied about your checks, that you didn't work there, because of course we only do a factual where did you work, we don't ask about other things, and you didn't have any disciplinaries. If you've ticked the box to say you don't have a criminal record, then we accept that. You've told us that. If we find out, and generally you'll find out before they start because they're on a notice period, we'll dismiss you for false representation. Not, we'll wait till all the checks are done, then we'll send you your contract, then you hand in your notice. Now, we're trusting our candidates. What a great message that is for candidates. They trust me already. Now, yeah, it takes a bit of getting your head around, and it takes a bit of getting stuff, but if we're talking about candidate experience, wow, they trust me. And you will find somebody, and you will find them out, and there will be no harm. And if the checks aren't back before they start, you make sure you put the right restrictions around them so they can't do anything until they come back. And then you know, and we haven't had to dismiss anybody. Not yet, I'm sure it'll happen, but when we looked at the stats, people are generally fairly honest. Okay, they may lie about, yeah, I've got a B instead of a C or whatever, and that kind of stuff, but that's something different. So for me, time to hire is also why the big issue. It's an our gift to control it. The other thing is if you make it easier and quicker for managers to raise the requisition, if they know it takes 4 weeks, make sure they raise it 4 weeks in ahead. Then the person's starting when they need it. Okay, and that's good messaging and it's good areas there. Oh, almost there. Choose your partner wisely. I was told to put this in by Oleeo, because of course this is an Oleeo event. And David Earland, no. I'm joking on this, because I will put my hands up. Oleeo used to be WCN, and we did that for civil service resourcing. So that's when I first came across these guys. And I think for me, and since then, I have implemented other systems in different places. And they know that, and I know that as well, because it's what's right for people. I think the great thing about choosing a partner is it's not just about the technology. It's about the stuff that goes on around it and being able to benefit from that. And I think for me, if you're going to choose it wisely, you have to make sure they know the journey you are on, and you've got to be honest. I liken it to my wife went to the doctor the other day, and she said, she asked, how much do I smoke? Do I drink? Oh, no, I don't smoke. And I go, well, you do. I only drink X amount. And I go, well, you don't. And then the problem, you drink more than that. And I know I do as well. Actually, the truth is I said this, but I'm putting it on my wife. And then you go, well, what's the point? That doesn't help me. The doctor's now going to think I'm healthy. I'm clearly not. And I don't drink, and I don't smoke. My wife does. But then how can he help you? And that's the thing, is you've got to be honest with your suppliers. You've got to let them know where you are and on the journey. And they've seen it all before. They've done it all before. And that's where it'll go. So I'm not going to talk about the technology, because there's loads of good technology out there. But the one thing about Oleeo is they tend to get it, and that's great. And then they're also improving as well. Now, I know NHS, and I'm not here because I think Track is a great system for my NHS colleagues there, compared to a spreadsheet and an email. Absolutely, it's there, and it did a great job, and it took lots of people on generation 1 of applicant tracking systems. But that's the only experience they've got, NHS. If there's other people on the market, then it is there as well. But it depends where everybody is on their life cycle and their journey. I heard somebody's watch go beep, beep, so I'm assuming it's 12 o'clock. So I guess that's a very quick whistle stop of what I think about this stuff, and kind of hopefully it's given you some, maybe a nugget or two just to take away and think about and what you're doing and how we can take it forward. Is that? I don't know, they're twitching.